I just automatically assumed that, of course, without having a colon, rectum, or anus, I would have to have a C-section. Hey guys, it's Maggie and I am back today, and today I'm doing another little chatty video because I realized I really haven't talked in depth about my labor and delivery story, my vaginal delivery, when it comes to living in a post-proctocolectomy body. If you aren't familiar, I don't have my colon, rectum, or anus anymore, which I'll tell you what, the pelvic floor and all of those organs are really closely tied to the GI system. It's something that I learned the hard way after my proctocolectomy surgery, and it really made me scared for the future. Should I ever be able to have a pregnancy, carry it to term, and deliver? I just automatically assumed that, of course, without having a colon, rectum, or anus, I would have to have a C-section. But as time went on and I realized I would really like to have children and I started looking into things, I learned of other people sharing their stories, vaginally delivering their babies with the same surgeries that I had, you know, living with an ostomy and living without all of these organs. So I started to think that maybe it was a possibility, but to be really honest with you, I did not think that I was having a vaginal delivery until my OB said to reach down and feel my baby's head coming out of me. That was the moment that I said, oh my God, this is happening. A baby's coming out of me. So I thought we could talk about the experience, what it felt like, and what I'm dealing with today now that I've delivered my baby girl and obviously still don't have those organs. I didn't grow them back. I do find it ironic though that I can grow a perfectly healthy set of all of these organs that I've always had trouble with. What a funny world it is. But before we get into today's video, I do want to thank today's sponsor, which is Element. I know I talk about them all the time. They are really helping me out today though, because you'll see in an upcoming vlog, I have been dealing with a lot of ostomy output, just losing a lot of fluids quickly, and then because I'm breastfeeding, my fluid requirements are through the roof. Element is a zero sugar electrolyte drink mix that has no artificial flavors, no artificial colorings, no gluten, anything like that. It's just pure hydration, which I absolutely rely on every single day. It's got 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 of potassium, and 60 of magnesium. Electrolytes are something that you can lose pretty quickly if you're having some GI issues, and just people in general, especially in the summertime, deal with dehydration. It is such a great way to get yourself hydrated quickly, to start feeling back to yourself, especially if you start getting, you know, headachy and fatiguey and brain foggy. Those are just the symptoms that I always think of because that's what I deal with. That's how I know, ooh, we need a little bit more fluid on board. And the best way for me to absorb that fluid, because I don't have my colon, is to use something like Element. Right now, I've been absolutely loving their lemonade salt flavor. It's a limited time flavor, as well as the raspberry one. This is an old favorite of mine. They have just been, they've been used every single day and they've really made me feel so much better, which helps me be able to take care of my baby girl. So Element is offering a free sample pack with any order of Element by going to drinkelement.com/LetsTalkIBD. That's DRINKLMNT.com/LetsTalkIBD to get that exclusive free sample pack. So highly recommend them. Been drinking them for a long time, and boy, do they make a huge difference. Thank you, Element, for sponsoring this video. Okay, so let's get into the experience of not having your rectum and anus and popping out a baby. Like I had mentioned earlier, my pelvic floor was severely impacted by having these organs removed. And I didn't realize that. I totally did not realize how different it would feel down there post-surgery. But I quickly learned it. I started to have some issues with pooling, discovered how much support the rectum really gives to the vaginal wall, and apparently I started to have a pocketing of my vaginal wall because I didn't have that support. So fluid collects there. You know, when I have my period, it's kind of like all or nothing. You know, I either have a lot come out or nothing at all for days. It's very strange, but I figured out what the problem was able to go to pelvic floor therapy to learn different exercises. I also learned, because I don't have that rectal support, that the muscles in my pelvic floor are trying to compensate, like overcompensate. So everything is really tight. My muscle tone is a little bit overboard, which can make things kind of painful down there. I wound up using dilators and pelvic floor wands. My pelvic floor therapist kind of started me off by doing massage, basically, of those muscles to help calm them down, and it made a world of difference. Plus exercises. I did a lot of rolling, like rolling my leg muscles even, just to calm them down, because it felt like my whole lower half was just So obviously, when you have a baby, all of this is impacted. All of it kind of has to do with it. So I was nervous. I was really nervous for a vaginal delivery, and I almost felt like I knew how hard it would be to have a C-section. That is recovering from surgery. I've had many surgeries. I even have a C-section-like scar because of my ectopic surgery. But I almost felt like a C-section would be easier for me, because I just did not know what recovery would look like. I was really, really worried about that. I thought that things would be really messed up afterwards if I were to be able to deliver vaginally. But thankfully, I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. That is not the case at all, and I'm so glad that everything worked out the way that it did. I think when we have illnesses like Crohn's disease, or we have such intense surgeries, we just automatically assume that things are not going to work out well for us. And I hope that this is a little bit of a story of positivity, which I've already kind of shared. I've shared about my labor and delivery and how well it went, and how, you know, I didn't even need to be induced. I did not need Pitocin. I didn't need anything. My body just, my water broke. I started to have contractions. Those contractions on their own were good enough to get me all the way to 10 centimeters and fully effaced, and you know, all the other things that you need to be in order to actually push the baby out. It shocked me. It shocked me. And then, you know, like I said, I was able to push the baby out. Some of the things that I feared, though, about if I were able to actually deliver vaginally, because I have that pocket from where my rectum used to be, and, you know, the vaginal wall kind of pushes outwards, I was worried that, I feel like this sounds silly, but this is what was in my mind. I was worried the baby would get stuck there. Like, it's such a small pocket, and the baby's head was way bigger than that, but I still felt like, what if her head gets in the groove and we can't get her out? I know that sometimes, you know, the doctors do need to help the baby's head kind of come in the right direction, and they might use different tools and stuff. I was really fearful of that, and I also thought to myself, either you're gonna feel the pain even with the epidural, or baby is going to be impacted greatly. Like, I was so worried about that. I was also worried I was gonna be torn apart down there. I also feared, you know, okay, what if it seems like I'm going to tear and they need to do an episiotomy? Well, this is something, if you're on Instagram, follow EMC, I think EMC_Brown, I think that's her name, Megan. I know her as Megan. She has had 3 babies now, and I know that she had an episiotomy with one of her kids at least, and what they had talked about beforehand with her OB was to do a horizontal episiotomy rather than a vertical. So rather than potentially going near where the anus used to be, causing issues there, because it's a really hard spot to heal, and having to heal it again, ugh, that sounded horrible. So that was something that I brought up to my OB. That was a concern of mine, because it took me a year to heal that thing. Those incisions are just in a weird spot. It's dark. It's in a crevice. Let's be real. I thought, if I tear there, that's going to be so much harder to heal than if he just makes an incision, right? So I did bring that up to my OB, and something interesting that he said was, you know, we really do episiotomies to preserve function. We don't need to do that with you, because your anus is not functioning. You don't have it anymore. And so for me, I found it interesting, because I didn't necessarily agree with that. He was worried more about the function. And I think what sometimes doctors don't realize is there is an element of preserving the look. I'm very fortunate with my proctocolectomy incision on my bottom that it looks pretty good. I know people are so curious about what they look like, and I am highly considering showing it in a video because it's something that I looked for prior to surgery, and there really aren't a lot of pictures online of proctocolectomy incisions. Like, what does your bottom look like without a hole, right? Maybe a little bit of vanity, I was like, what if I tear and it looks terrifying afterwards? Like, what if it heals really weird? Because right now, unless you really spread things open and take a deep look, you can't tell what's going on. So I had that element of, doctor, what if I do tear and things look scary? Like, what if you could preserve things by doing an episiotomy, even though you're not preserving function? You're preserving how my butt looks. And that's maybe weird, but it's a concern of mine. Thankfully, in my case, I did tear, but I did not tear horribly. In fact, I couldn't really see the tear. I never actually saw where the problem was. I know that it was closer to the front, and I did need a stitch or two. I felt kind of funny because, you hear people saying the first pee after surgery burns like crazy, or bowel movement. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with that, but your first pee really burns, and I didn't have that experience. Like, I actually felt okay. So maybe I lucked out on that, but yes, my tear was more forward than it was towards the back, which I totally found to be a miracle because I felt like with my incision, when you have an incision and you have scar tissue is just not the same as your regular skin. It's much more fibrous and hard, and it's not as flexible. So that was something I was like, oh my gosh, what if I don't stretch? What if I can't stretch? Or if I do, that tears the scar open too. So, I don't know how, but somehow my baby's head fit through. And her head, thanks to Zach, my husband, with his big old head, her head was in, I think, the 95th percentile or something. She's got a big head and then kind of like a skinny long body. So that was kind of funny. But yes, really lucked out on that. And I am a fairly petite person. A lot of you guys have seen me carry my baby Nova. She looks huge on me because she goes beyond my waistline when I hold her. Just because I'm short. I'm only 5 feet tall. So somehow we did it. Somehow Nova came out and it was fantastic. So hopefully that could be a little bit of encouragement for if you're in the same situation. And I think I should go back to this because I talked about it during pregnancy, but obviously I didn't know how things were going to work out. I was really hoping, I go back and forth on this, I was really hoping for a vaginal delivery because when you have so much surgery, you have scar tissue, and that's been a problem of mine. I've had adhesions removed before. They didn't want to cut me open unnecessarily. So that was a really big push for having a vaginal delivery as well. I've had comments of people assuming yes, you're going to need a C-section, just like I kind of always thought my whole life. But it sort of turns out it was safer for me. It was better for my health to do a vaginal delivery because that means less risk for more scar tissue, more adhesions growing because I'm not getting cut open. I found that to be very cool. And also, my hope is that this is not my only baby. There were definitely some difficult moments of pregnancy. Don't get me wrong at all. But I absolutely loved it. I loved being pregnant. I loved delivering. I love being a mom. I can't imagine myself only doing this once and calling it quits, calling it a day. So having the vaginal delivery, at least what my OB said, could help me. I know that sometimes people get ectopic pregnancies from C-sections, I guess on the scar on the uterus. I don't know for sure. I'm not an expert in any of that, but that was something in the back of my mind. My hopes for future children, having a history of ectopic pregnancy already, I was like, a vaginal delivery really puts me in the best position for that too, because then my uterus is at least intact and, I don't have any problems there. So yeah, I know I'm kind of all over the place in this video, but these are just the things that are popping into my mind. Now, coming into the postpartum period of healing down there have been some struggles. There have been some things that I am realizing I'm going to need to heal from and work on. And I think probably every person that's ever carried a baby, their pelvic floor definitely has changes, but mine have felt different than what I expected. I've always heard of your pelvic floor feeling kind of weak after having a baby, which I absolutely experienced early on. I think I mentioned it to you guys in a video where I said, I can't even do a Kegel. Like, I can't even feel where I would do one. I can't clench. That has sort of come back a bit. I'm almost worried that there's too much muscle tone now. I have noticed that my legs, I have noticed my pelvic floor in intimacy feels exactly like it did before I had pelvic floor therapy. Like instant. It feels like I'm right back there and I need to do all of these exercises. I need to get the pelvic floor wand out. And I don't know whether I should go back to pelvic floor therapy. I don't think my pelvic floor therapist works where she did anymore, so I can't even go back to her. And it's like that, I don't feel like going back to a new person to work on this all over again. I know that I have the tools to at least improve it a little bit, but that is something I've been exploring of how to get back with it. Zach actually spent like an hour the other day working out my leg muscles for me, and I kind of told him how my pelvic floor therapist did it for me. She would roll out my legs and massage kind of like the inner muscle of my thigh and then the top of my thigh. And that has really helped me a ton. But yeah, it feels like my pelvic floor muscles are overcompensating again. Like they're over tight and they're trying to keep everything in. So that's been interesting. In terms of the tear that I had healing, that seems to have healed very well. I am, I think, almost 8 weeks postpartum now, and I couldn't tell you that I tore. I can't find it. I don't know if I'm looking in the wrong spot or what, but I don't see anything. It was a really superficial tear though, so I didn't expect to have a lot of trouble with that healing. And I'm just so grateful that I didn't tear and I have to work on healing my bottom again. That was like, that was a fear. I was thinking, man, that was such a pain in the butt, literally, to heal. I don't want to go through that again. I think down there, the biggest struggle I had was just the swelling. It was so swollen all the way back. Everything was swollen, and I definitely want to do a video talking about just the healing from that, like the products I used and stuff. I feel like I have good experience having dealt with the proctocolectomy incision of healing things down below. So at least I felt prepared in that sense. If I did have a really bad tear or I had an episiotomy, I feel like I would have been capable of handling it, both pain-wise and just how to manage the wound, basically. And if you're curious, because I was kind of curious about this too, having gone through that surgery and having this incision on my bottom, having had stitches there and having those stitches removed, what was the pain like compared to the pain after delivering? I would say the proctocolectomy was much more painful. But it's similar. It is sort of similar. There are some difficulties sitting, like you have to be careful, but I think just the position of where the proctocolectomy incision was makes it a bit more painful. I think when you sit down, you're sitting more on it. When you're lying down, you're more on it than the pain more forwards from a vaginal delivery. But it is similar. It is really similar. I did have a couple of instances where I wiped and I hit the stitch. That's sort of how I knew where it was. I wasn't exactly sure, but I did hit the stitch a couple times and I was a little tearful, it stings, but it did go away. And that pain really felt similar to when I had my stitches removed from my bottom after surgery. So yeah, I could tell you it is similar, but definitely a little easier. That being said, I didn't have a crazy tear. So maybe if I had a really, a 3rd degree tear or whatever, if it was really deep, it would probably be on par, potentially worse. It is really impressive to see how your body adapts and how it can do these incredible things, even though maybe your body hasn't been the most reliable historically. It's really incredible to see what it can do, and I just have said this pretty much in every video I've posted of how proud I am of my body. Like, physically, it's just knocking it out of the park, and what a cool experience to deliver a way that you never expected after all these surgeries. It's so cool, but I wanted to share the experience in case maybe you're one of those people that lives with an ostomy and had proctoclectomy surgery. Maybe you're pregnant and you're just wondering how it's gonna go, or maybe you're just curious. Maybe you're just like, wow, the girl without a butthole popped a baby out. Wow. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching today's video. Make sure to check out Element, get your free sample pack. If you are interested, head on over to drinkelement.com/LetsTalkIBD. You'll get your free sample pack with any order. And I've been loving, like I said, the lemonade salt, but really been drinking down the raspberry salt too. All right, thanks so much for watching. I will see you in the next. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you are looking for a way to help support my channel, consider liking this video or even subscribing. You can also check out my store at letstalkibd.shop. I have stickers and hoodies like these guys over here, just related to chronic illness and inflammatory bowel disease, something fun. And I also have a coupon code for my YouTube watchers. You could also become a member of my channel, like the wonderful people scrolling on screen here. They've become a member and they have access to videos a little bit earlier. It's a great way to support my channel, and really, just watching my videos means the world. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next.